She thought calling the cops on a black schoolboy would be quick and easy. She didn't expect the officers to hesitate, to glance nervously at one another. And she definitely didn't expect his mother to show up, flashing an FBI badge. The moment their eyes met, she stiffened. She knew she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. But what happened next? She never saw it coming. The afternoon sun beats down on Mapleview Heights, an affluent suburban neighborhood where pristine lawns stretch like green oceans before colonial-style homes. 12-year-old Marcus Williams cuts through Westfield Park on his way home from chess club, his school backpack heavy with textbooks and his chess set. He's wearing his private school uniform, navy blue blazer and khaki pants, but has loosened his tie in the unseasonable October heat. The shortcut through the park will save him 15 minutes. His mother, Special Agent Tanya Williams, texted that she'd be home early today, a rare occurrence. For once, they might have dinner together before she's called away again. Marcus quickens his pace, excitement building at the thought of showing her his new chess strategy. What Marcus doesn't notice is Catherine Harlow watching from her bay window. The 42-year-old HOA president narrows her eyes as she sees him cutting across her corner of the park. This isn't the first time she's seen this boy in the neighborhood, but something about today, his confident stride, the way he checks his expensive watch, triggers something in her. He doesn't look like he belongs here. Not in Mapleview Heights, where the median home price is $1.2 million. Catherine's fingers tighten around her phone. Just last week there was a report of a break-in 3 streets over. She's the neighborhood watch captain. It's her responsibility to keep this community safe. Through the open window, she calls out sharply, "Excuse me! Young man, what are you doing here?" Marcus stops, startled. He's lived in this neighborhood for 2 years, but he's never spoken to this woman before. "I'm just walking home, Mom," he replies, voice carefully modulated the way his mother taught him. Always respectful, always calm. Never give them a reason. "Which home exactly?" Catherine's voice carries an accusatory edge. "I know everyone on this street." Marcus points toward the large Tudor at the end of the cul-de-sac, the newest house in the neighborhood. "I live there with my mom." Catherine's laugh is short, dismissive. "That's the Petersons' old house. They sold it to a doctor and his wife." "No, ma'am. My mother bought it 2 years ago. She's not a doctor, she's—" "I don't have time for this." Catherine cuts him off, already dialing her phone. "The police can sort this out. There's been a series of break-ins, and I'm not taking chances with some kid casing our homes." Marcus feels a cold rush of fear despite the warm day. He's heard the stories, seen the news. Black boys who were just walking home, just playing in parks, just existing in spaces others decided they didn't belong in. His mother's warnings echo in his mind. "Keep your hands visible. Don't run. Call me immediately." As Catherine speaks urgently into her phone, describing him as suspicious and possibly armed, despite his visible school uniform and chess set, Marcus feels the weight of history pressing down on his 12-year-old shoulders. He slowly reaches for his own phone, hands trembling slightly, and texts his mother, "911 Park." Within minutes, 2 police cruisers pull up. The officers approach cautiously, hands near their holsters. But something in their demeanor shifts as they get closer. Recognition dawns in one officer's eyes. Marcus has met him before, at one of his mother's FBI liaison events with local law enforcement. "Marcus, you're Agent Williams's son, right?" Officer Ramirez asks, his posture relaxing. Before Marcus can answer, a black SUV screeches to a halt behind the police cruisers. Special Agent Tanya Williams emerges, her FBI windbreaker and badge gleaming in the afternoon sun. Her eyes take in the scene in one practiced sweep. Her son standing frozen on the sidewalk, the police officers, and Catherine Harlow now standing on her front step, with a look of dawning horror. The moment their eyes meet, Catherine stiffens. Something about the cold fury in Agent Williams's gaze tells her she has just made the biggest mistake of her life. Special Agent Williams approaches with measured steps, her badge prominently displayed. 15 years with the FBI's Civil Rights Division has taught her to control her emotions in moments like these. But this is different. This is her son. "Officers," she acknowledges them first, voice professional but eyes never leaving Catherine. "I see you've met my son. Is there a problem here?" Officer Ramirez shifts uncomfortably. "Mrs. Harlow called about a suspicious person. We didn't realize it was Marcus." "And what made my son appear suspicious?" Agent Williams asks, the question hanging in the air like a drawn weapon. Catherine steps forward, her initial shock hardening into defensive indignation. "This is a private neighborhood. I've never seen him before. There have been break-ins." "Marcus has lived here for 2 years," Agent Williams interrupts. "He wears his private school uniform every day. He walks through this park every Monday and Thursday after chess club." Officer Chen, the younger of the 2 policemen, glances at his partner. Neither wants to be in the middle of this. "Ma'am, it seems there's been a misunderstanding. No crime has been committed here." "No?" Agent Williams raises an eyebrow. "Filing a false police report is a crime, and describing my son as possibly armed when he's clearly carrying a chess set could constitute reckless endangerment." Catherine's face flushes. "I was protecting my community. You can't possibly understand what it's like." "To feel threatened?" Agent Williams finishes for her. "I understand perfectly. So does my son." For the first time, all eyes turn to Marcus, who stands perfectly still, his chess set clutched to his chest like armor. The weight of the moment isn't lost on him. He's seen this scene play out on the news, in viral videos, in history books. The only difference is his mother's badge. "Can I go home now?" he asks quietly, and the simple question cuts through the tension like a knife. Agent Williams nods, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "Officer Ramirez, would you mind walking with us? I'd like to file a formal complaint." As they turn to leave, Catherine calls after them, her voice tinged with both anger and fear. "You're overreacting. I would have called about any strange kid in the neighborhood." Agent Williams stops but doesn't turn around. "My son attends Westlake Academy. He's 12 years old and has never been in trouble. But you saw him and imagined a weapon. Ask yourself why." At home, the Williams' modern kitchen stands in stark contrast to the traditional exterior of their Tudor home. Agent Williams makes hot chocolate, their family ritual for difficult days, while Marcus sits at the island counter, methodically setting up his chess pieces. "You know this isn't the last time," she says finally, placing a steaming mug before him. Marcus nods, moving a pawn forward. "I know, Mom." "What were you thinking when those officers approached you?" Marcus's hand pauses over a night. "I was thinking about Tamir Rice, about how he was playing in a park too." He looks up at his mother, eyes too old for his young face. "I was thinking that if you weren't FBI, they might have shot me too." The truth of it hangs between them. Her badge protected him today, but it won't always be there. Later that evening, Agent Williams receives a call from her superior at the bureau. Catherine Harlow, it turns out, isn't just any HOA president. Her husband, Richard Harlow, is a prominent donor to the mayor's re-election campaign and sits on several influential boards. The bureau doesn't want a public incident. "Handle it quietly, Williams," her supervisor advises. "We don't need the publicity right now." As she hangs up, Agent Williams looks out the window toward Catherine's house. The system she's dedicated her life to serving is now asking her to stand down. The irony isn't lost on her. Even with her badge and position, she's facing the same pressure to not make trouble that countless black parents have faced when defending their children. Across the street, Catherine sits in her living room with her husband Richard, who paces angrily. "An FBI agent? Jesus, Catherine. Do you know how this could affect my position with the mayor? How was I supposed to know? Catherine snaps back. They don't exactly look like they belong here. Richard stops pacing. Keep your voice down. The last thing we need is someone recording you saying something like that. He pulls out his phone. I'm calling Gerald at the precinct. He owes me a favor. Catherine watches her husband make calls, leveraging connections to make the problem go away. It's how things have always worked for them. But something about the look in Agent Williams' eyes tells her this time might be different. 3 days later, Marcus sits in the school library, losing himself in a book about famous chess grandmasters. A notification pings on his phone, a local news alert about a string of robberies in the western suburbs. The accompanying photo shows police arresting 2 white teenagers caught breaking into a home in Mapleview Heights. The same neighborhood, the same break-ins Catherine had been so concerned about. But not the profile she'd been looking for. As Marcus walks home that afternoon, he deliberately takes the long route, avoiding the park and Catherine's watchful window. But halfway down his street, he sees a group of neighbors gathered on the Williams' front lawn. His mother stands on the porch, flanked by 2 of her FBI colleagues, addressing the small crowd. Marcus approaches cautiously, slipping through the gathering until he reaches his mother's side. She places a protective hand on his shoulder without breaking her address, which is why the FBI's Civil Rights Division has launched an official community education initiative in Mapleview Heights, she's saying. Recent incidents have highlighted the need for conversation about racial profiling and its dangers. Marcus scans the crowd. Most neighbors look curious or supportive, but Catherine stands at the back, arms crossed defensively. Beside her, Richard Harlow whispers urgently to another man in an expensive suit. This isn't a punishment, Agent Williams continues. It's an opportunity for growth. The first workshop will be held at the community center this Saturday. I hope to see all of you there. As the crowd disperses, Richard approaches, his smile tight and professional. Agent Williams, perhaps we could discuss this privately. I'm sure we can come to a more discreet arrangement. This isn't about discretion, Mr. Harlow, she replies evenly. This is about my son's safety and the safety of every child who doesn't fit someone's idea of who belongs here. Be reasonable, he lowers his voice. I've spoken with your supervisor. The Bureau doesn't want trouble with the mayor's office. Agent Williams's smile is cold. That's why this isn't a Bureau initiative, Mr. Harlow. This is a mother's initiative. I've taken personal leave to organize it. She holds up her phone, showing a social media page already gaining traction. Belonging, a community response to racial profiling. Richard's face darkens. Catherine made an honest mistake, which could have cost my son his life, Agent Williams finishes. If those officers had been different, if they hadn't recognized Marcus. The unspoken truth hangs between them. They all know how differently the story could have ended. Later that night, Marcus finds his mother in their home office, surrounded by papers and her laptop open to dozens of statistics on racial profiling incidents. They want you to stop, don't they? He asks, settling into the chair across from her. Agent Williams looks up, the strain of the past few days evident in the shadows under her eyes. Yes, your incident isn't severe enough to justify an official bureau response, not when the Harlows have connections. So we're alone in this? Marcus asks, his young voice carrying an old weight. Agent Williams shakes her head and points to her laptop screen. Not alone. Look. The community page she created has exploded with responses, not just from their neighborhood, but from across the city. People sharing similar stories, offering support, volunteering to help with the workshop. Among them, Marcus recognizes names of his classmates' parents, teachers from his school, even Officer Ramirez. Your story resonated with people, Marcus, his mother explains. Sometimes it takes one incident to open eyes. But not Catherine's eyes, Marcus points out. She still thinks she was right. Agent Williams sighs. Some people never change, but systems can if enough people push for it. A notification pops up on her screen. An email from the mayor's office requesting a meeting. Another from the school superintendent offering to implement similar workshops in the district. "Mum," Marcus says suddenly, "I want to speak at the workshop. I want to tell my story myself." Agent Williams studies her son's face, the determination there, but also the fear. "It won't be easy. People will question you, doubt you, try to minimize your experience." "I know," Marcus replies, "but if I don't speak, nothing changes. And next time it might be someone who doesn't have an FBI agent for a mother." The truth of his words settles heavily between them, his privilege and his burden intertwined. The day of the workshop arrives with unexpected fanfare. Local media has picked up the story. The community center is packed beyond capacity. Marcus, in his school blazer, reviews his notes nervously backstage. Through a gap in the curtains, he spots Catherine and Richard Harlow in the back row, their presence clearly reluctant, damage control rather than genuine interest. But in the front row sits Officer Ramirez with several of his colleagues, and beside them, Marcus's chess club teammates and their parents. As Agent Williams introduces the program, Marcus takes a deep breath. The weight of representation is heavy on his 12-year-old shoulders, knowing that to some in the audience, he will never be just Marcus Williams, chess enthusiast and math whiz. He will always be a symbol, a case study, an example. But as he steps to the microphone and looks out at the diverse faces watching him, he realizes something else. He's not just representing the traumatized, he's representing the resilient. "My name is Marcus Williams," he begins, voice steadier than he feels. "3 days ago, someone looked at me and saw a threat. Today, I want you to look at me and see your neighbor." 6 months later, spring blooms across Mapleview Heights. Marcus walks through the park, no longer taking the long way home. His chess set swings lightly in its case as he follows the familiar path. The community workshops have expanded beyond their neighborhood, adopted by 3 school districts and featured in a regional law enforcement training program. Agent Williams has been asked to speak at a national conference on community policing. Progress, but not perfection. As Marcus passes Catherine's house, he sees her in the garden, pruning roses. Their eyes meet briefly before she looks away, returning to her flowers. They haven't spoken since the incident, though Catherine attended 2 workshops, sitting silently in the back row each time. At the edge of the park, Marcus notices a new family moving in, a black couple directing movers with a toddler clinging to the mother's leg. The father looks up, spots Marcus in his school uniform, and waves hesitantly. Marcus changes direction, approaching them with a smile. "Welcome to Mapleview Heights. I'm Marcus Williams. My mom and I live in the Tudor at the end of the cul-de-sac." Relief washes over the man's face. "James Porter. This is my wife, Amara, and our daughter, Zora." He glances around the immaculate neighborhood. "We were starting to wonder if we were the only ones here." "You're not," Marcus assures him. "There's the Patels across from us, and the Nguyen family 2 doors down." He pauses, then adds, "It's not perfect here, but it's changing." As they talk, Marcus notices Catherine watching from her garden. After a moment's hesitation, she sets down her pruning shears and walks over. "I'm Catherine Harlow." She introduces herself stiffly. "I'm the HOA president. If you need information about garbage collection or community events, I have welcome packets prepared." The interaction is formal, performative even, but it's more than Marcus expected. As Catherine returns to her garden, James raises an eyebrow at Marcus. "There's a story there, isn't there?" he asks. Marcus nods. "A complicated one." At home, Agent Williams is packing for her conference, her FBI badge and the workshop materials side by side on the kitchen counter, the dual identities she navigates daily. I saw the new family, Marcus tells her, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. And Catherine actually introduced herself to them. Agent Williams pauses her packing. Progress? Maybe, Marcus shrugs. Or maybe just performance. Hard to tell. Sometimes performance is the first step, his mother points out. People act differently before they think differently. Marcus considers this as he sets up his chess pieces, a habit when he's working through complex thoughts. At the last workshop, Officer Ramirez said they've changed their dispatch protocols. They now have to verify reports of suspicious persons before approaching with force. That's a systemic change. Agent Williams nods, pride evident in her voice. That could save lives. But if Catherine still crosses the street when she sees someone who looks like me at night, did anything really change for her? Marcus pushes a pawn forward, playing against an invisible opponent. Agent Williams sits across from him, moving a piece in response. We can't change everyone's hearts, Marcus. Some people will always fear what they don't understand. What we can change are the consequences of that fear. Outside their window, James Porter helps his wife carry boxes into their new home, while their daughter chases butterflies across their front lawn. A normal family on a normal day, claiming their right to ordinary existence. Mom, Marcus says suddenly, do you ever wish we could just be regular people? Not symbols or examples or the first black family in Mapleview Heights. Agent Williams follows her son's gaze to the Porters, understanding the weight behind his question. The burden of representation, the exhaustion of always being someone's learning moment. Every day, she admits. But then I think about the families that will move here after us, who won't have to be the first, who might just get to be people. Marcus contemplates this, moving his knight across the board. Check, he says quietly. As evening falls over Mapleview Heights, porch lights flicker on along the street. Marcus sees Catherine standing at her window again, watching, but this time she's looking at the Porter's home with an unreadable expression. Some battles are won in courtrooms and policy meetings, others unfold more slowly, in community centers and across neighborhood streets, in the spaces between who we are and who we might become. Your move, Mom, Marcus says, turning back to the chessboard. Agent Williams studies the board, then her son's face, seeing the child he is and the man he's becoming. A boy who carries the weight of history and the possibility of change on his narrow shoulders. She moves her queen deliberately, protecting her king. Some games are longer than others, she tells him. The important thing is how we play them. Outside, in the gathering darkness, the neighborhood settles into an uneasy peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the beginning of something that might eventually lead to understanding. Not perfect, but possible. What does it really take to change a person's heart? A community's culture? A system built on centuries of bias? Perhaps it starts with one moment of reckoning, one workshop, one conversation. Or perhaps it starts with a 12-year-old boy walking home through a park, claiming his right to belong.